You can't scale a six-figure per month Airbnb portfolio by yourself. At a certain point, you're going to need to hire a team, not just for time freedom, but to protect your reviews, maximize revenue, and make sure this business is sustainable long term. In this video, I'm walking you through the exact team that I've built to manage my 19 properties, how I found them, what they do, and how we stay aligned through quick and efficient communication. All right, so I split these team members up into a couple different categories. First is going to be the core operations team. So first one in here is going to be cleaners. And with cleaners, a lot of times I am finding these cleaners through the platform Turno. And the reason I like this is because it is immediately going to let you see the top probably 5% of cleaners in that specific market, because they are already going to be familiar with Airbnb cleans. That way I'm not having to sift through cleaners that, may or may not clean, your primary house, every other week. I want people who are dialed and understand what it takes to clean an Airbnb. And that way I can lean on them, for, their expertise, and they can be my boots on the ground when I'm operating in a remote city. And their job is going to be to clean between every stay, when we have guests checking in and out. And then I'm also going to be expecting them to handle minor maintenance issues. And this can be like swapping the batteries on my smart locks or my security cameras, maybe changing blinds, as they get broken, and quick fixes, receiving Amazon packages, maybe swapping shower curtains, things like that. They're already going to be at the property, stuff that might take them an extra 5 or 10 minutes while they're there. That way I don't need to call in my maintenance guy and pay him like a 1 or a 2 hour minimum. As far as communication goes with cleaners, I communicate with them multiple times per day, and it's almost always via text. Very rare that I'll jump on a phone call, or I don't think I've ever taken a Zoom call with one of my cleaners. Next year is going to be a maintenance handyman. A lot of times I'm finding these individuals on Thumbtack or TaskRabbit. And I like this because, again, I'm immediately going to be able to, see some of the best handymen in those markets. I also like the review system on Thumbtack and TaskRabbit. I can easily see what other people have rated them for the work that they've done. And then also importantly, I can see how many jobs, they've actually completed on there. And a lot of times, if these guys are taking the time and efforts to sign up with Thumbtack and care about their reviews, they're going to be high quality. I've also noticed that when I find cleaners through these sites, they're going to be a little more tech savvy than maybe, the random referral you got from your realtor. And sometimes I need that. Maybe it's setting up smart TVs or a new projector in a movie theater, or resyncing my cameras, or signing into the app on my noise monitors to program some new sensors. So that's going to be a positive there as well. As far as cadence and communication, so for every property, I'm sending these guys in maybe once a month or every other month even. And I keep a list of maintenance items that I've gotten from either guest reviews or guest feedback or cleaner feedback. And I try and do this, and I bundle that into kind of one maintenance day where I can Amazon ship them anything they need to their house. They could take it to my property and, just spend maybe 4 or 6 hours in my place knocking out all the maintenance items. This is going to help me avoid paying minimums for small jobs. If I sent them over every time my batteries got low, they're going to want to charge me an hour or two minimum. So I try and get the most of them there. Because a lot of times I'm not going with the cheapest handyman by any means. I want someone who's efficient and who I can really lean on as an expert to, to take good care of my property. So if I'm paying $30, $35, $40 an hour for a maintenance guy, I want him to go spend 3, 4, 5 hours at my property, knock everything out. Yeah, it might cost me $150, $200, but still cheaper than sending over, the cheaper $20 an hour guy, 10 times a month just to handle random little stuff. All right. And then lastly, under core ops is going to be an emergency contractor. So a lot of times these are going to be like the big box companies that are local to your area, and just finding one contact that's open 24/7 and can handle HVAC, plumbing, and electric. And just kind of having them on call is going to be beneficial. These are going to be, again, for your emergencies. They're not going to be the cheapest contacts, but they're going to be licensed and reputable, and they can get there within an hour a lot of the times. And every major market is going to have a contractor like this. As far as cadence goes, they're certainly as needed. I would never call this person, just for kind of random things. But if I get a message from the guest in the middle of the night that they don't have heat or there's a plumbing leak, I need someone who I'll pay that premium for someone who's going to go there quickly. And as far as like how often I'm using these, so I got 19 properties. I'm probably calling one of these companies once a month across all properties. Again, these are going to be those emergency situations. And these are going to be crucial contacts to have when you've got, guests who are having a poor experience, which might either cause like a refund or, a horrible review on your account. All right, next here we'll move on to the backend and strategy team. Number one up here is a virtual assistant. And I've got a couple of these, and this isn't someone that you need for just one, two, or maybe three properties, but as you grow and you scale, or if you really just want to get the most of your time back, this is someone you can implement. My VAs handle guest messaging, scheduling of contractors. They'll handle reviews, so they will review guests or they will respond to guests' reviews. They'll communicate with my cleaners and order supplies. If we need some new bed sheets or towels or cleaning supplies, they will jump on Amazon and ship these to my cleaner's house. That way, the cleaners can bring it with them the next time they clean. And they also help with claims. So, if the guest does damage or if we have some sheets get ruined, we will submit all of that back and, recoup that via a claim that we're submitting against that guest. As far as a meeting cadence with a virtual assistant, so I meet daily on Zoom calls with them, and they do other things besides this here, but I do meet every morning to connect on this stuff. We'll check in, we'll plan, we'll talk about, maintenance, what needs done, and basically I'll be there for like 15, 20 minutes for them to basically ask any question they have, what they need me for, so then they can go complete, their day's worth of work with getting all their questions answered for me. Next here is going to be security and monitoring lead. So I've got a security guy. This isn't someone that I implemented until I was at like the 15 property mark. You could probably start to think about this once you hit, maybe 7 or 10. But ultimately, I've got a guy, it's actually a set of brothers who are overseas in Pakistan, and they manage all of my blink cameras and my minute noise sensors remotely. So they will literally monitor all 19 of my properties 24/7, and they're going to be checking for things that, are going to be like pets that were undisclosed, people outside, after quiet hours making noise, parties starting, guests moving a bunch of furniture, just other red flags. And they're going to verify those alerts, log incidents. And then I primarily communicate with them via iMessage. I want those, ultra urgent messages coming directly to my cell phone. And they probably communicate with me every other day via text. Most of the time, this is simple stuff. I mean, if guests are hanging out in the hot tub playing some music on a Bluetooth speaker at 11 o'clock at night, not a huge deal, but I am going to send them a proactive message just saying, hey, please kill the music, be mindful that we have quiet hours at 10, no noise can come off the property after 10 p.m. Maybe once a month, I'll have like an urgent case where it's like, a party that's starting to happen or guests that are being really bad. In that case, I need to jump in and, cancel the reservation or, potentially get the authorities involved. But across 19 properties, that happens, maybe once per month there. All right. And then lastly is going to be a revenue manager. This is someone that you should implement even if you just have one property. But a revenue manager is going to use Price Labs and some other tools to optimize my rates and my occupancy to make sure that we are squeezing the most amount of revenue out of each property. We're messaging daily, but we go deep into a strategy call on Zoom once per week. And that's where we're going to audit all of my properties and their occupancy. And we look at things on a 7, 30, 60, and 120 day window. We're also going to be looking at like a market penetration index, which will tell us how our properties are doing compared to the overall competition. And then we'll take a look at like the booking pickup and see how many reservations do we get in the past week. And, what are some big changes that we might want to implement, starting this week going forward. But then our daily messages will go back and forth. I mean, I'll lean in and get his advice if I've got a longer stay where a guest wants a discount or when we're setting up a newer property, we're going to go back and forth a couple times between our weekly meetings. And, really throughout our whole communication or during that week, we're going to be prioritizing the properties with, revenue issues or opportunity gaps. So there's always going to be a handful of properties, every week that are performing, maybe a little bit lower than the rest. So we'll go deeper on those. And then we'll also look at properties if they're performing maybe abnormally well, like significantly over what the market is doing. Well, in that case, we'll dive into those and say, hey, do we need to increase our prices or make our guests book, longer stays during those periods of time? So that's it for the back end and strategy team. And then next year I've got strategic partners. So designer is going to be up here, and this is going to be a huge, team member, especially when you're setting up a new property. And primarily they're there to help make intentional choices on your layout, amenities, and furnishings. And, when I say this, basically the goal with them is to maximize your return on investment through the design and the amenities. So basically, when I'm designing a new property, I split it into two pieces. Number one is everything I need to buy and supply for the home that is going to give me an ROI based off of what I pick. That's going to be like my curtains and my wall colors and my couches and my headboards and my throw pillows. And again, everything that will make my pictures look better and make the guests, book more often or pay higher money, things like that. And if it is a ROI item, I am 100% leaning on a designer and paying them for their time to help me put that property together. The other half of the design is all of the non-ROI items. This is going to be like your silverware and your coffee maker and maybe the towels that you pick, coffee creamer, sugar, things like that, toilet paper, paper towels, soaps, all of the things that you need for the property, but it's not going to make you more money whether you buy, X silverware versus another brand. And in that case there, I just have a shopping list that I have my assistant go through every time we launch a property, and they just order our standard stuff. So with the designer, again, the goal is to focus on those ROI generating items. And we communicate, I would say, every other day when setting up a new property, primarily, over text. And then maybe we jump on like a weekly Zoom call, or if I have like specific questions or we're making changes, we'll do a Zoom. But other than that, it's primarily texts. I'll also sometimes lean into a designer if I'm redesigning a property. Let's say I've got, kind of a savings built up and I want to reinvest that into a property. Maybe I'll pay them just to redesign a room or repick some, new wallpaper for some areas or a specific amenity if I, finish the basement and I want to add a game room at that point. It doesn't just have to be when setting up a new property, but again, going back to, hey, is it an ROI item I'm putting in? And, do I want to pay for the help there? Lastly here is mentors. Even me, after 19 properties and, launching my first place, almost 5 years ago, I still lean on mentors to grow my portfolio and better my operations. Primarily, I'm leaning into them when I am buying a new deal. I'll get their feedback when I'm underwriting a property. A lot of the deals that I'm going after nowadays require significant upfront investments. So, the overall risk of buying a bad deal is going to be greater now than maybe what it was, when I was buying some smaller deals. But, assessing new markets and, the overall strategy long term, with that property, with the primary goal of helping me avoid a costly mistake and basically buying a bad deal. That's the number one thing that I'm going to be leaning on them for. But I still do pay them for a weekly meeting where, I am ultimately installing new tools and softwares to help me get my time back. That's one of the big things that I'm focusing on right now is, hey, what can I do to make my operation smoother? Or maybe pass this item off to a team member to get it off of my back. These are people that I'll connect with, over Zoom on a weekly basis. And then I've got access. That's how things run efficiently, smoothly, and profitable. So people always ask how I manage 19 properties. And the truth is, I don't. My team does. And just because all of those members have their specific roles and we stick to that communication cadence I was telling you about, that's how things run efficiently, smoothly, and profitably. And when you're installing these team members, I recommend you just do them one at a time. And you don't install a team member, at least to take things off your plate, until you've done it a little bit. That way you know how to answer their questions and you've been in the trenches and you can help them continue to grow and develop. So probably start with cleaners and then dial in, your messaging and your SOPs. And then from there, add a revenue manager and, then an assistant. And then probably that security guy would come, very last. But again, probably adding these one at a time, getting comfortable, feeling dialed with them. That way you're not really training or adding an additional member until you're feeling good with that previous one. So that there is what my team looks like. If you are looking for help installing some of these team members in your current Airbnb portfolio, or if you're looking for help finding and successfully launching your first Airbnb deal, I'd invite you to book a free deal planning call. I'll put a link in the description below. We'll jump on, we'll listen to your goals. If we think we can help you, we'll walk you through exactly how we're helping current and new Airbnb investors with their properties, and then share with you what it would look like to team up with us on your next deal. So again, just click on that link below. It's a free deal planning call, and we look forward to connecting with you.